Hello everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. My name is EDJ, and I'm going to be continuing with Epic History TV's Napoleon series. So, yeah, last time we basically learned about, like the beginning of his Italian campaign, how he managed to turn, the soldiers into a great fighting force, and how he essentially, like, when he was sent to the Italian campaign, that was seen as the lesser of the campaigns. Like, the main armies were up, and then he was in Italy, and he somehow managed to turn this really bleak looking situation into, like, the situation that essentially won the war. Like, I was relooking some of oversimplified Napoleonic wars, and he put it really nicely when he just said he turned the sideshow into the main show, and that every victory since he joined the army felt more like Napoleon victories rather than, French victories, and in a way it's just a testament to his genius and, his ability to lead, like, soldiers. Like, he really was like the last great conqueror, and just really awesome. And this is part two now, and this is about the Battle of Castiglione. Castiglione. I'm pretty sure I'm not saying that right, but either way, this is gonna be telling about his battle there. This is the second part of the. Wait, let me check. Okay, yeah. This is part two, Castiglione. Then the Bus Bassano is next, so we'll be covering that. So before I jump right in, I just want to quickly say I want to apologize if I'm not speaking as much. Last video I was pretty much quiet. Now usually in my reaction videos I want to try to be a little different. I try pausing often and talking, adding as much as I know about certain subjects. I feel bad if I just sit down and say nothing, because I feel like that's boring, and then, like, what's the point, right? That's kind of like the stigma with a lot of reaction people. Like, I don't know, I just try to, but it's hard for me nowadays, because unlike the Alexander the Great, or even some of the Rome series, it's like, I don't know much about Napoleon's early life. Like, I might be able to talk in the later videos, but here, I'm in completely uncharted territory in the life of Napoleon. His adventures through Italy. So I don't know much. I'll try, but like I said, I'm learning too, guys. So I apologize. And yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it. If you want to watch the original video without my face or me at all, I'll put the link in the description down below. Feel free to support the original, creator. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get to learning. Let's watch part two of Napoleon's Italy campaign.
An Epic History TV BMF Productions collaboration. In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age. May 1796. The French Revolutionary Wars have entered their 5th year. And on what most consider to be a secondary front, there has been a stunning development. A 26-year-old general of the French Republic, Napoleon Bonaparte, has waged a lightning campaign across northern Italy, defeating the Kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia and driving the Austrians across Lombardy. 2,000 Austrian troops remain holed up in Milan's citadel, but they cannot prevent his triumphal entry into the city on the 15th of May. Now, the French general holds court at the Palazzo Serbelloni, issuing decrees on behalf of the Directory in Paris, while his troops enjoy several days' rest. Lombardy is to be reorganized as a French client state, known as the Lombardic Republic. Political and economic reforms sweep away the old Austrian state, to the delight of Italian intellectuals in cities like Milan. But the French also demand 20 million francs to help pay for the war, while their troops requisition vast quantities of food, horses, cattle, and boots. Most inflammatory.
I think we haven't really got into the point yet, but there is a point where Napoleon basically, like, on behalf of the Republic, like, negotiates treaties and whatnot without, like, I think them fully knowing. He just does it. I think that was really telling of, his political mind, because, like, winning is one thing, but Napoleon had such a great mind for governing as well. Like, I think that's the aspect of him that usually gets most ignored. Like, everyone's like about the epic battles and like how he won wars, but it's like the guy was a pretty like competent ruler, and like it's amazing, just his mind for like not only warfare but for politics. Like, I don't know, it's insane. The man was quite frankly a genius that doesn't come around much often. So I don't know. I just think that was really telling of his early like political mind, and you just see like just the genius he possessed.
Are their attacks on the property and dignity of the Catholic Church, which enrage Italian priests and peasants, and are a gift to anti-French propagandists. On the 23rd of May, as Napoleon's troops set off in pursuit of the Austrians, revolt breaks out in Pavia. The next day, there are riots in Milan. Napoleon races back to the city, where order is soon restored. But on the road to Pavia, at Binasco, he encounters 1,000 armed rebels. Colonel Lannes' grenadiers rout the peasants, killing 100 and burning the village. A terrible example, which will be effective, Napoleon writes. Pavia is retaken the next day, with little opposition. A score of ringleaders, including several priests, are shot.
Yeah, I think this was really telling of the animosity between the Republic and, like a lot with the rest of Europe, is that the Republic in its zeal basically got rid of the Catholic Church, which was like a very powerful institution during the French monarchy, and they got rid of it, and I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the time Maximilian Robespierre tried to establish a cult. I forgot what it's called. Something about virtue, as he always spilled, or like the goddess of virtue. I don't know. Point is, he had like a religious festival and gave some speech. The guy was insane. But point is, like they got rid of the Catholic Church, and like that was such a huge point. Even a lot of French people still identified as Catholic, So yeah, that was not a good thing. And eventually, Napoleon does reinstitute the church, obviously very limited in its power and authority, but he brings it back because Napoleon, I don't believe he was a religious man, but he had a pragmatism when it came to religion as a tool to keep people subdued. And I think this is very telling right now. Like, yeah, there are issues with the church, and maybe he may have seen this and been like, yeah, we need the church, people need the church. We can't just get rid of the faith. And I think there was a time when he was in Egypt, like he basically said treat like, I guess the Islamic or like the faith of Islam well. Like he basically understood the importance of faith, religion, even if it's just to subdue people, and treating it well. Even though I think it's just showing of his pragmatism. I don't believe he himself was that big on the religion.
Hundreds of hostages are taken from prominent local families to ensure future cooperation. Napoleon resumes his advance east. His army now organized into 4 divisions: Kilmain's advance guard, Augereau, Massena, and Serrurier. General Berlioz's Austrian army holds the line of the Mincio River, with Lake Garda on his right and the great fortress of Mantua on his left. This, together with the fortresses at Peschiera, Verona, and Lagnago, forms the famous quadrilateral, 4 bastions that cement Austria's grip on northern Italy. But once more, Beaulieu can't get a read on Napoleon's movements. He scatters his troops, trying to defend 4 potential crossing points, and is further distracted by fake preparations to cross Lake Garda by boat. In fact, Napoleon has decided to cross the Mincio at Borghetto, and when Kilmain's advance guard arrives, they find the bridge defended by a single battalion of infantry and handful of hussars. The Austrians are soon driven back, but a sudden counterattack nearly bags General Bonaparte himself. A possibly dramatized account has him hopping over fences with one boot on to evade the hussars. This lucky escape leads to the formation of an elite cavalry detachment to act as Napoleon's personal escort. They are named the Compagnie des Guides à Cheval. Their commander is a young cavalry captain named Jean-Baptiste Bessières. In time, this unit will become the famous Chasseurs à Cheval of the Imperial Guard, the Emperor's ever-present bodyguard on campaign. This video is sponsored by Enlisted, the unique World War II first-person shooter, in which you lead your squad into battle in a variety of major campaigns, from Barbarossa to the streets of Berlin. Each squad member has his role to play, from riflemen to engineers and medics, while each campaign features hundreds of historically accurate weapons and vehicles for that setting. This is intense multiplayer World War II combat, with stunning graphics and sounds like we've never seen before. Play Enlisted now on PC, Xbox or PlayStation using the link in our video description, and get a free bonus pack including multiple weapons, soldiers and premium account. Thanks to Enlisted for sponsoring this video. Taken by surprise by the crossing at Borghetto, Beaulieu begins a withdrawal to a new defensive line in the Adige Valley. However, at Mantua, he leaves behind a reinforced garrison, well supplied and ready to withstand a siege of at least 2 months. Napoleon cannot bypass Mantua. Its garrison is too powerful. But the fortress city will be a tough nut to crack. Its old walls surrounded on 3 sides by a lake and on the other by malarial marshland. The most unhealthy place in Italy, Napoleon tells the Directory. His biggest problem is his lack of heavy siege artillery. Most of these guns are in Milan, bombarding the Austrians, still holed up in the citadel. More guns were supposed to arrive by sea, but have been intercepted by British warships, commanded by a certain Commodore Horatio Nelson. Since April, Napoleon has launched 3 successful offensives, marched more than 200 miles, and won 10 battles. But finally, outside the walls of Mantua, he is brought to a halt. And the demands on his limited force are growing. He must maintain the siege of Mantua, even though its guns outnumber his own and no direct assault can be made. He must protect his lines of communication back to France and guard against further revolt in Lombardy. And he must be ready to face the Austrians, who are receiving reinforcements from Germany and will soon counterattack. To add to his problems, the French Directory demands that he lead an expedition to central and southern Italy. He's to threaten military occupation unless these states cough up huge sums to help fund the French war effort. Napoleon vehemently opposes the idea. Marching troops the length of Italy in high summer, he warns, will end in sickness and death. Fortunately, strong words alone persuade Naples to sign an armistice. And in the end, Napoleon doesn't even have to go as far as Rome. The French march through the Duchy of Modena, the Papal States, and the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, raising more than 40 million francs in tribute from states that are powerless to resist. Napoleon dines in Florence with the Grand Duke before returning to Milan. There he is reunited with his wife, Josephine, who's arrived from Paris, discreetly accompanied by her new lover. Napoleon does not linger in...
Yeah. Josephine was for the streets, dude. Oh man. It's like one of the weirdest pairings, but it's weird at how like they almost got along near the end. I don't know. Josephine and Napoleon is like such a weird pairing, but like also endearing. I don't know. It like worked even though it really shouldn't have. I don't know.
In Milan. Its citadel has finally fallen, freeing up his siege guns. His troops have seized another 150 guns from the forts of central Italy. Napoleon can now make serious plans to take Mantua, and he has no time to lose. In the Tyrol, the reinforced Austrian army is beginning to stir, under a new commander. Berlioz is gone. Now, 72-year-old Field Marshal Count von Wurmser is in command. A courageous cavalryman, vigorous beyond his years, and determined to avenge Austrian defeats in Italy.
You arm your company with the most powerful surfer hardware you can, but now you can achieve 125 times faster progress.
Since crossing the Mincio, Napoleon has reorganized and redeployed his forces. General Massena's division is near Rivoli, watching the road to the Tyrol. Two of his brigades, under General Sorre, are at Salò, watching the western side of Lake Garda. General Despinois' division is in support at Peschiera. General Augereau's division is around Legnago, watching the eastern approaches, while Kilmain's cavalry mounts patrols. General Serrurier's division carries out the siege of Mantua itself. But Napoleon's hopes for a rapid conclusion to the siege are in vain. The Austrian garrison conducts a skillful and active defense, raiding French entrenchments and seizing supplies. Murat, recently promoted to brigadier general, plans to lead a group of men in Austrian uniform across the lake at night to take the guards by surprise. But the operation's abandoned when the water level suddenly drops. The French step up their bombardment of the city, firing more than 1,000 cannonballs and mortar shells in one 6-hour period. Mantua is being battered to pieces, but its walls are not yet breached. Napoleon is out of time. Field Marshal Wurmser is finally marching to Mantua's aid. He has divided his army into 4 columns. 2 central columns are advancing down the Adige Valley directly towards Mantua. Another column to the east is making a wide flanking march, while a 4th column, under General Kostanovic, advances down the western shore of Lake Garda, planning to seize Brescia and cut Napoleon's line of retreat. Massena comes under heavy attack and, severely outnumbered, abandons Rivoli and begins a fighting retreat. As soon as the news reaches Napoleon, he races to Castelnuovo, ordering Augereau, Despinois and Kilmaine to join him as fast as possible. But suddenly, it is Kostanovich's column that's emerging as the greatest threat. General Saue's troops at Salo are heavily outnumbered. They put up a stiff resistance, but are forced to withdraw. The next day, Austrian troops surprise the French at Brescia. They take the town, as well as an army hospital containing 2,000 French sick and wounded. Even Napoleon's wife, Josephine, en route to Brescia, is nearly captured in the chaos. Wurmser has wrong-footed Napoleon. Already outnumbered, he's lost 5,000 casualties. His left flank is in tatters, and there's a real possibility he may be encircled. It's the greatest crisis he has faced as an army commander, and will force him to make an agonizing decision. On the 31st of July, after 2 months of blood, sweat and sacrifice, General Serrurier is ordered to abandon the siege of Mantua. He is to send 2 of his brigades to reinforce Massena and Augereau, and withdraw with the rest of his troops to guard the army's line of retreat. 179 guns, plus ammunition and supplies which cannot be moved, are to be buried or tipped into the marshes. Napoleon needs every man he can get, because in the midst of the crisis, he has spotted an opportunity. Kostanovich's advance has caught him off guard, but Lake Garda separates him from the rest of the Austrian army. Napoleon will concentrate his forces against Kostanovich, beat him in battle, then pivot again to take on Wurmser.
Yep, the old divide and
French
conquer.
divisions are soon on the move. Kostanovich's troops reach Lonato, but here they encounter Massena's vanguard. The Austrians come under heavy attack, and with French reinforcements arriving, they have to pull back. The next day, the French retake Brescia, along with most of their supplies, sick and wounded. Then, Napoleon catches a lucky break. Wurmser has been on Massena's heels, harrying his rear guard as far as Peschiera. But now he receives reports there are French forces massing between him and Mantua. Mantua is his priority, so he swings south, away from Kostanovich, towards a city Napoleon has already abandoned. By the time Wurmser realizes his error, it's too late. He has gifted Napoleon 24 crucial hours. A blunder for which he will pay dearly. The 3rd of August sees confused fighting west of Lake Garda. One French brigade slips through the wooded ravines unnoticed, straight into Salo, causing havoc behind the Austrian lines. But the Austrians repel 3 attacks on Gavardo, and all seems to be going well until their own advance meets Massena's division at Lonato. Massena's counterattack is led by the 32nd Demi Brigade, which is becoming known as one of the Army of Italy's most feared units. "Bayonets only," Napoleon calls out, "and you, 32nd, maintain your glorious reputation." lead Austrian brigade is routed. Colonel Junot, though wounded 6 times, accepts their commander's surrender. Kostanovich's force has been mauled. Fearing for the rest of his command, and with no word from Wurmser, he decides he must march back around Lake Garda to rejoin the army. The same day, 15 miles to the south, General Augereau's division fights an aggressive rearguard action near Castiglione, keeping Wurmser at bay while Napoleon deals with Kostanovich. Augereau begins with a bold attack on General Liptay's vanguard, driving it back to high ground near Solferino. But here, Liptay receives steady reinforcements as the rest of the Austrian army begins to arrive. Augereau keeps up the pressure, preventing an Austrian advance. And though there's a late scare when enemy cavalry sweep around his left flank, they are unsupported and soon pull back. For Augereau and his men, it is a long day of heroic action against a superior force, one which Napoleon will never forget. 12 years later, as emperor, he will make Augereau Duke of Castiglione, and always remind his critics, he saved us that day. Nevertheless, by nightfall, Augereau's division is...
Yeah, I really like the highlight of the other, like, you know, great leaders during this time, because, you know, usually, like, we focus a lot on just Napoleon, but Napoleon worked with a lot of, like, competent military minds, and there were a lot of acts of heroism, I think that's the right way to say it, heroism in, you know, the French army. Like, Napoleon obviously himself is a genius, but he surrounded himself and worked alongside other competent, you know, people, and I kind of like learning about them, because, like, you know, essentially, like, you know, we usually, I guess history just kind of forgets these people, but they really are important, you know. Napoleon couldn't do everything single-handedly, right?
At breaking point. Our soldiers are exhausted from fatigue and hunger. If you don't send me reinforcements, I won't be able to hold out. Next morning, French troops renew the attack on Kostanovich, and quickly discover he's beating a hasty retreat. A major disaster is narrowly avoided when 3 lost Austrian battalions stumble into Napoleon's headquarters at Lonato. They call on the general to surrender. Napoleon responds by loudly ordering his grenadiers and artillery into position, then demands that the Austrians surrender to him or be put to the sword. It's a bold bluff. Few of his troops are anywhere near. But the Austrians meekly lay down their arms. As Napoleon swings his army round to take on Wurmser, the Austrian must decide whether to stand his ground or fall back to a stronger line behind the Mincio River. He chooses to stay put. By engaging Napoleon, he hopes to buy time for Kostanovich to regroup and resume his advance, and for Mantua to be resupplied. His reasoning is sound, but his intelligence is out of date, and he's underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's forces will move. At dawn on the 5th of August, the Austrian army is 4 miles east of Castiglione, formed up in 2 lines. Its northern flank anchored on the village of Solferino, its southern flank on a well-fortified redoubt at Monte Medolano. Napoleon faces him with Massena's division in the north, Augereau's division in the centre, and Kilmain's cavalry in the south. He's also formed an elite unit of grenadiers and cavalry to be held back for the decisive moment. Napoleon doesn't seem to have much of an advantage. But he has 10,000 more troops converging rapidly on the battlefield. 5,000 under General Despinois, marching from Brescia. 5,000 more under General Fiorella, coming from the south. To buy time for these reinforcements to arrive, and to lure Wurmser out of position, Napoleon orders Massena and Augereau to attack. There is a short exchange of fire. Then the French begin a feigned retreat. The Austrians take the bait, some units advancing off the high ground, while Wurmser extends his right wing, looking to outflank Massena's division. Around 9 AM, the sound of gunfire from the south alerts both sides to Fiorella's arrival, behind the Austrian left flank. Napoleon immediately orders Augereau and Massena to attack again, in earnest. Despinois' troops arrive to join the assault. But Napoleon has sprung his trap too early. Wurmser is not yet fully committed and reacts swiftly. He organizes a new line to fend off Fiorella and hurriedly recalls his right wing. But he cannot save the redoubt at Monte Medolano. Napoleon's aide-de-camp, Major Marmont, leads forward a battery to blast the position. His guns open a devastating cannonade, clearing the way for an attack. Around 10 AM, the reserve grenadiers charge forward with bayonets fixed, sweeping the Austrians off the hill. Meanwhile, to the north, the 4th and 5th demi-brigades surge onto the Solferino heights and seize the redoubt before Pozzacatana. Carried forward by their momentum, they storm the Solferino tower and village beyond, the shaken enemy falling back in disarray. The Austrians are hard-pressed along the line, and now French cavalry and Fiorella's troops threaten to cut off their retreat. While Napoleon is active, energized, urging troops forward, Wurmser seems to go into shock. A French émigré serving with him recalled, "He watched without seeing anything, saying anything, hearing anything. This brave old man, his head covered with white hair, did not think anymore." Finally, Wurmser orders a general retreat, back across the Mincio River, covered by their cavalry and some late Austrian reinforcements. The French pursuit quickly peters out. After a week of forced marches in stifling heat, with little to eat or drink, Napoleon's men are close to collapse. But their general is content with what they have achieved.
The gods have spoken.
Dang
You need a new, clean heaven.
Wurmser's army finds temporary refuge behind the Mincio River. But Napoleon immediately resumes the attack. Massena is sent north to relieve the French garrison at Peschiera and threaten Wurmser's line of retreat. The Austrian general has had enough. After ensuring the garrison of Mantua is fully resupplied and reinforced, he begins his withdrawal to the Tyrol to regroup and rethink. The French nip at his heels all the way. Napoleon has just endured his toughest challenge yet as an army commander. And though initially wrong-footed by his adversary, he's displayed brilliant flexibility and his usual energy to weather the crisis and then triumph. But Mantua remains the key to Italy, And while it stands unconquered, the Austrians will do everything in their power to save it. Wurmser will be back, and when he returns, he'll find himself on a collision course with Napoleon, as he launches his own attack on Austria itself. Thanks again to Enlisted for sponsoring this video.
Yeah, that's about it. Alright guys, so this was another great video. Again, I think it really demonstrated Napoleon's like flexibility, and yeah, you see that even when like things, Napoleon often like fought against like the odds, and usually, well, most of the time until the end obviously overcame them. So I think this was very, you know, telling, and very like, I don't know, it just shows like, I think what the cool thing about these Italy videos is that since it's like Napoleon's first time commanding, you're seeing a lot of what, you know, a lot of what defined him being put on display like for the first time. Like, I don't know, I think it's just really cool, and I'm really looking forward to looking through more of these. So yeah guys, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'll be, if, like I said, I'm sick right now. If you notice, I kept burping throughout the video. Like, I feel like that tickle. You know that feeling when you get the tickle in your throat, and then I was like eating and I like vomited up stuff. So like right now, I think I'm sick. I feel healthy. It's just a tickle that's bugging me, but I don't know if it'll get worse or not. If it's fine by tomorrow, I'll continue. If not, you'll know I'm probably sick, and we'll have to wait a little bit, maybe a few days before I continue this. But either way, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.